This is Colin O'Keefe here for LXBN TV. Well, the Department of Health and Human Services shares some statistics this week on a dramatic drop in uninsured Americans, pointing potentially to the success of the Affordable Care Act. The law's fate hangs in the balance thanks to the Supreme Court. So if the justices strike it down, what will the Obama administration do? Well, joining me to share his thoughts is attorney Pepper Crutcher of Balch Bingham and author of the firm's blog, The Affordable Care Act Review. Pepper, recently there was a New York Times piece that was put together that's been circulated around quite a bit that said Obama could, in a way, bypass SCOTUS, or at least comply with the ruling, but only in respect to the 4 plaintiffs in King v. Burwell. Is that really a feasible strategy here if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, Thomas Jefferson thought it was feasible. So did Abraham Lincoln. Both of them took that view. So did the Dixiecrats, who didn't like Brown versus Board of Education. Yes, it's possible that a party that doesn't like a Supreme Court decision can say, well, that decision only applied to those parties and with respect to that controversy, and you can come see me and sue me if you want, but until then, I'm not complying. Now, I don't think our current president wants to go down in history along with the Dixiecrats who opposed Brown v. Board of Education and engaged in massive resistance. So I don't think that's really politically likely. Also, he's got a legal problem in that his government is a party to this litigation. It won't surprise anyone if the Supreme Court says in its mandate the regulation is vacated. You cannot enforce it against anyone. So I don't think that's really a plausible idea that the New York Times ran, and Noah Feldman of Bloomberg and Harvard Law School, I think, has written on that since that article came out. It said basically the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it wasn't a piece of news, but again, it was just an op-ed. Somebody, proposed, putting that theory out there. So let's get into something, I guess, feels a little bit more real. So yeah. What other contingencies could potentially exist for the Obama administration? I mean, they've basically said, hey, if this happens, it's disaster. Please don't strike this down. This is good. Please don't strike it down. But what contingencies could potentially exist? We've seen the Obama administration utilize executive action on a number of key issues. Is that at play here, or what other contingencies could exist? Well,
other contingencies would include political pressure in states that don't currently operate their own exchanges, leading them to very quickly operate their own exchanges due to the loss of subsidy for so many of their citizens. That's a real possibility. Another contingency is the Republicans in Congress, feeling political pressure for the same reason, actually pass a bill to replace the subsidies. Now, you can foresee that Democrats would want that bill to say we fund the subsidies in exactly the way we said in the case they should be funded, through the exchanges. Republicans would probably oppose that because that would mean the employer mandate lives on in the states with no state-based exchanges, and we would like the employer mandate not to. That's possible. Now, if none of that happens and we get to the point where it's executive action or nothing, I don't think that the president has less ability here than he had to deal with the immigration problem. I've read Judge Hanen's 123-page opinion out of the Southern District of Texas on the immigration program, and the president has some serious problems there. So what could he do? He could, for example, expand, at least through 2016, the reinsurance and risk corridors program, saying essentially to the exchange participating insurers, if you will just stay in, although I can't give you the subsidies through the ACA, we can make you whole otherwise, at least through 2016. And that might buy enough time to then make feasible one or more of the other options. So I could see some sort of executive action, possibly under an existing program, just enlarging and moving money around from one place to another.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to watch for sure. Of course, we're still, a little bit of time away from actually getting the ruling from the Supreme Court. But, once we get it, it's going to be very, very interesting. Again, we hear these statistics about the uninsured rate dropping, at a dramatic pace. So, you can understand with this being his signature piece of legislation, not just for the previous term, but really his entirety in office, you can understand that this is going to be a very big fight.
A lot of my Republican and Libertarian friends have the misplaced notion that if King versus Burwell succeeds, ACA will completely die. It won't. And we will go back to the insurance market situation that prevailed before the ACA was passed. We won't. Insurance risk underwriting, how the whole system is financed, has changed pretty fundamentally. And what we would go into would be a period of great confusion and a lot of financial harm for a lot of people. Now, there would be a blame game in which everybody stands in a circle holding hands and, reaching into each other's pockets. I'm not saying anybody particular is to blame, but that's the situation we would be in. And we wouldn't just be back to the pre-ACA days if the case succeeds.
Exactly. I mean, I've seen a number of pieces that have said, the Republicans say that they're going to repeal the ACA if they win, the presidency come 2016. But, at the same time, it's a little too late for a straight just stripping off the Band-Aid. Things are firmly entrenched. So we'll have to see what happens.
There's going to have to be not just a repeal, but a repeal and replace. There are budgetary consequences to a straight repeal. There are Medicaid Hospital Insurance Trust Fund consequences to a straight repeal. There's going to have to be a repeal and replace. Last week, I looked at every single bill pending in Congress that references the Affordable Care Act. There was only one bill that had been dropped as of last week by Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee that would repeal and to some degree replace. And her bill is pretty much just an outline of how state regulators cooperatively would regulate the interstate sale of insurance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's a great point. There's got to be some kind of plan in place moving forward. And to this point, we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. Once again, that was Pepper Crutcher of Balch and Bingham. For more of his insight on this particular topic, really a great blog tracking everything that's going on with the ACA. Visit acareview.com. Thank you for joining me today, Pepper.
Thank you so much, Colin.